EAGLES, Eagles.
It's a football Friday here across the JAKIB Sports Network. I'm Joe Krause, sitting in today for the Alexander James Krause. Zander is off today, along with his co-host John McMullen. A 2-hour edition of Birds 365 on this Good Friday, a very solemn day for Christians that are celebrating the Easter season. And today we mourn the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Today is Good Friday, tomorrow, and then into Easter Sunday. Johnny Mack, a good morning to you, sir. Nice to be with you. I haven't had a chance to join Birds 365 or be with you in this type of a setting. What the hell's going on in Philadelphia, brother? Not much to talk about, is there?
Yeah, it's boy, it never ends with this team. I'll tell you that. One of the reasons this show exists is because it never ends with this team. And partially that's just the nature of the NFL and how well they've set up the calendar. But the Eagles always seem to be one of the lead stories around the league, just in general. And obviously, things that came out with ESPN and Eagles not extending Jalen Hurts, which, by the way, is not, in my opinion, not the biggest deal in the world. He's under contract through 2028. He does have, this is his last year of fully guaranteed money. But I mean, if you look at the similar contracts that were signed right after Jalen Hurts, none of those quarterbacks have been extended yet. So that part of it, I think is a big nothing burger. But, obviously I think the ESPN story specifically, Tim McManus, my good friend, and Jeremy Fowler from ESPN teaming up did a good job explaining some of the things we've talked about on this show for years, and the fact that Jalen Hurts isn't comfortable doing certain things. And as he's gotten more power as a star quarterback in this league and a Super Bowl MVP and a Super Bowl champion, he's exercised that power and expressed those desires. I kind of look at it differently than most people. And that's like, I don't know why the organization is so steadfast on turning him into something that he hasn't been, instead of accentuating what he has been, which has been good enough to make 5 consecutive playoff berths and 2 Super Bowls and 1 Lombardi trophy. So
that's the one thing, John, about the conversation that I don't get. I don't, that I don't understand. You are what you are, in life. That's just the way it is. And if you take what your reference to what Jalen has done, which we've all watched, why change? Why do you need to change the player to fit the system? The system should fit the star. The system.
Well, that's what is strange to me, because that's sort of what Nick Sirianni's core ethos as a head coach has been. Build. If you go back to his time in Indianapolis, he's very proud of that because of the circumstances they went through. They had a superstar quarterback when he was there, and Andrew Luck, who retired unexpectedly. So they had, and very late in the process, and they had to change the offense to fit Jacoby Brissett. And Jacoby Brissett, obviously not nearly as gifted as Andrew Luck, so you do things a lot differently. And they were a pretty good team. You're not going to be a great team, but they did a good job. And then obviously there was a certain ceiling with Jacoby Brissett. So the next year they went out and got Phillip Rivers at the latter stage of his career, although he came back this year. And they changed the offense again. And he was very proud of that. He said it's 3 different offenses for 3 different players, which I think is, again, the foundation of good coaching. I wrote yesterday about Bill Parcells and his, I was told that story, and everybody around the league has heard that story. He was talking to his, coaches and personnel people, and they kept saying, And it was during draft time, and they kept saying, well, this guy can't do this. This guy can't do that. He got frustrated, and he said, hey, guys, don't tell me what they can't do. Tell me what they can do, and then we'll build around that. Tell me what they can do. So what I find ironic, and I think it's low-hanging fruit. Look, you said people are who they are. I'm not going to go that far because you need to evolve as a player. I think Jalen Hurts has evolved as a player from 2021 till 2025, some good, some bad. So I think that evolution is real, but the idea of completely changing a player is where I can't get on board with. And the traditional we've all grew up, and you and I have grown up through multiple generations of football, and the game has changed dramatically. And there used to be very few dual threat quarterbacks. And the pocket style passer was the traditional way to play the position for many, many years, for decades. And that began to change, and people still kind of cling to it. But it take a Phillip Rivers or take current pocket quarterbacks, and Brock Purdy is the best example because they're trying to go to a Kyle Shanahan like offense. You think anybody would ask Brock Purdy, hey, Brock, completely change and run a bunch of RPOs? If you want to go, anybody asking Tom Brady to do that? Changes? No, of course, it's silly. It's absurd. So why don't people recognize the other side of it? Well, why are you trying to turn Jalen Hurts into those guys?
Well, if Nick Sirianni doesn't believe in doing that, then why are they doing it? Why?
Good question.
Why is there friction? One thing that you've always said, which is true, the head coach of the football team is the CEO. The buck stops with him. If the team doesn't reach Jeffrey Lurie's expectations or the expectations of either the fan base or what Howie Roseman has outlined, the head coach is going to be changed. That's a given. So if he's the CEO and he believes in the strength of if he believes in coaching to the strength of the talent, why change? Why is there even a question of it? I mean, Jalen knows his strength.
Well, it's been ugly for 2 years, really 2+ years. The passing game. We're talking specifically about the passing game, and that was sort of hidden by the fact they went to the Super Bowl. They still had a bad passing game throughout that season, and really, it dates back to 2023. But I would argue it dates back to 2021. It's never going to be a high volume passing game with this particular quarterback, and that's fine. All the high volume, which one of them has been as successful as the Eagles over that same 5-year span? Now, again, it's a team game. It's the ultimate team game, as Nick will always say. Jalen Hurts isn't responsible for all that winning by himself. They built a tremendous team. So my thought there is Nick Sirianni sees some of that talent eroding and aging and believes they can't win the same way as they have in the past, and believes this is the best way to win. That's where I disagree with him. Look, it might be the best way to win with a different style of quarterback, but if that's the way you want to go, you have to go get a different style of quarterback. Simple as that to me.
Well, if Sirianni believes that, by the way, I disagree with you. I don't believe that he does. I mean, if you're if you're a head coach and you are partnered with a great quarterback, aka Andy Reid in Kansas City, and And that 1-2 punch sets the groundwork for a successful run of wins and Super Bowl appearances and Lombardi Trophy victories and all of that. And it's the most important position on the field. Isn't that the top priority of the coach, to make sure that everything is built around Jalen, whether it's a new offensive coordinator or not? Everything should still be built to suit the strength of your number one player.
Well, you would think so. You would think so. And it certainly has been that way. They built this offense, and because look, I'm going to be blunt here. Nobody wants to run this offense. Kellen Moore didn't want to run this offense. Nick Sirianni didn't want to run this offense. Kevin Patullo certainly didn't want to run this offense. Brian Johnson, run down the list. Nobody wants to run this offense. It's boring. It's ugly. It's not aesthetic. You have all the, wannabe film people say, this is a high school offense. Think about the absurdity of that. I've always said, you got NFL coaches for 15, 20 years, and you got people on YouTube thinking they don't understand high school concepts. No, the quarterback, and now it's becoming clearer, people are finally admitting it, is not comfortable with certain things, and they built the offense around his strengths and what he is comfortable with. That's why you see so many hitch routes. That's why you see so much one-on-one, because that's what Jalen Hurts wants. I think the hope is for an Eagles fan, the hope should be, I should say, is that the frustration stems from an unwillingness to try other things. And that I can understand. Look, in other words, they want to go under center more. He doesn't like being under center. He doesn't like being under center because his whole football life has been in the shotgun or pistol. He's comfortable with it. Sometimes you got to get out of your comfort zone. Sometimes, and they tried it some last year to some success. And I think they're frustrated with the idea that, hey, just try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll scale back to what they did in 2024. That's exactly what happened in 2024. And it'll probably happen again. But I think the frustration from the Eagles side stems from an unwillingness to try new things, to try to evolve further. Or at least I think that's got to be the hope. Because if this is just throwing them in the deep end of the pool, look, we have to do this. We can't win this way anymore, so we have to try to copy Kyle Shanahan, which, by the way, I also don't like, which we can talk about. And just say, all right, sink or swim, like a father teaching his kid how to swim, throw him in. Maybe he sinks, maybe he swims. I don't like that thought process.
John,
and then the idea, real quick, let me just wrap it up. The idea that people have caught up, I think, is such low-hanging fruit. In other words, there's this narrative that, well, everybody caught up to what the Eagles do. No, the offensive line had a bad season. They were all banged up. Is it it's always been a simple offense. If you execute your blocks and execute your play, nobody's stopping it. They know what's coming. Nobody's stopping it. So I think that's low-hanging fruit as well, and maybe a secret hint that this offense, from a talent perspective, isn't what it once was, because they don't think they can execute it.
What is Jalen Hurts' strengths, John? Top to bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, whatever they are. What do you identify as his strengths?
Well, number one, and this is what the first thing I would fix if I was in charge is, look, no matter who was responsible last year for taking the quarterback run game largely out of the equation, or at least dampening it to a significant degree. That's got to stop, because he's not the same player without the threats of keeping the football, pulling the football, and making plays with his legs. So he's got to be convinced that that's got to be a part of his game. And I get the standpoint of he makes $50+ million and people want to extend the shelf life. But why do you want to extend this shelf life? Like I've always been the mentality, yes, a dual threat quarterback is not going to have the same shelf life as a Tom Brady. We can all default to that. My whole thing is take advantage of what you have while you have it. And whatever that shelf life is, use it up to the expiration date. That's the biggest strength. Obviously, his uniqueness as a player, his playmaking ability, his off-schedule stuff, his ability to impact defenses. That's his biggest strength. He's also got a unique ability. I always compare it to pitchers in baseball. Sometimes you got your best stuff and sometimes you don't have your best stuff. And there were certain pitchers that were grinders, and if they don't have their best stuff, they could still get you through this different era of baseball. I'm going back. They could get you through to 6-7 innings and get you a win. Roger Clemens would be the best example of that. Even if he didn't have his best stuff, he was going to get you. He's going to battle and push through it and probably get you through 7 innings and get you a win far more often than not. He's got this ability. Most quarterbacks, if they don't have it, if they're having a bad game, they have a bad game. I've seen this time and time again. He has a bad game. He has a bad first quarter, bad second quarter, bad third quarter, throwing the football. And then he makes 2 or 3 plays down the stretch to win a game. Like it's and I always use the term unique. Zander will tell you that. By the way, I never put 2 and 2 together. It's Alexander. Do you call him when you're mad at him? Do you call him Alexander? Should I do that?
It is Zander. As a matter of fact, I thought I was going to get a text. What the hell, Alexander James? I think Alexander James is a very powerful, very stately,
it's very stately,
name. But so I thought it was a good way to come into the show. I may never do that again. I don't know. It's his world, brother. I'm just living in it, man. You know what I mean? So, but to your point on Jalen, so take what you've identified and then insert the word evolve, continue to evolve, and the meaning of evolve, which I get. We have to do that in life. This show has evolved. The JAKIB Sports Network has evolved. Media has evolved. So everything in life has to evolve. But to me, the evolve means to take what you own, take the strength of who you are or what you can do, and become better at that, because there's always another level. So back to Sirianni, if the job of a coach, and I'm sure you've said this, Zander has said this, I heard Seth Joyner say this, if a coach can make a player better, the player will listen to that coach. If the player doesn't feel as though the coach doesn't know what he's doing, or he can't make me better, or he can't help me evolve to be better, to stay on the field, it might be a punch out from that player. I'm not saying Jalen's not listening to this new plan, but maybe that's the case, John. Jalen wants to be what Jalen wants to be, and he's got a good history of success with that. So he's
got a great history. it's so confusing. And that is, when they tried to ship last year because the running game wasn't working. The running game wasn't working because the offensive line was banged up, and they felt they had to change to more under center stuff, more play action stuff, and now they're going full bore, diving in, implicitly stating Shanahan like, McVay like, hiring people off that tree, Sean Mannion, Ryan Mahaffey, Chris Cooper, etc. It certainly looks like they're saying, look, we're doing this, get on board or don't, but we're doing this. And obviously, if he doesn't get on board, ultimately, this is his last year of fully guaranteed money. Next year, as soon as, and by next year, I don't mean 2026, I mean 2027. If they have a poor season, yeah, I mean, they could move on. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be the obviously the top story throughout the season, how this offense looks, how Jalen is morphing into it. Now, Nick always, he said the same thing when they hired Kellen Moore, and they were going to have a different scheme. And he said, but we've done a lot of stuff successfully, and we're not going to forget about that. So hopefully it reverts back to that mentality. But this is a lot different. They've gone deeper into the idea of change than they did when they hired Kellen Moore. So it's a wait and see. That's all you can do at this stage because they're not on the field. They're not playing. My assumption is they will spend the entire offseason, the 9-week offseason program, basically trying to implement the Shanahan-like offense. They'll start it in training camp as well, and then they'll get to the regular season and do what they did in 2024, which is, all right, we're not that great at this. We're good at this. We're going to go try to win a football game. I think that should be the hope of everybody. But it's much different this time. They are hell-bent on changing this offense. And I don't understand it. I don't. Unless you come to the conclusion that this is the way we have to play. And, we can't do it now because of the salary cap restraints, but they're already thinking about moving on, which is possible. But you got to get it. If you want to run this offense, you got to get a different style of quarterback.
Yeah, or not run this offense.
Yeah, well, exactly.
I mean, I think of when Andy Reid was here in his tenure before he was fired by the Eagles and had the new contract offer. I think the following morning he took the private jet to Kansas City and had to, and signed off on the new contract. But I think of that run with Donovan. I don't ever remember conversation or Andy Reid supporting or injecting the desire to change the offense away from what was McNabb's strength at quarterback. Am I wrong in saying that?
I wasn't here at the time, but there was a lot of talk, I know, just being in the league, covering the league, but in different cities that, Donovan himself had the mentality of he didn't want to run as much as his career developed, and that he was in a different era where it wasn't as prevalent as it is today. Today it's people have accepted, for the most part, people in the league have accepted the dual threat quarterback. But, you know, Donovan had the mentality of he's never going to be regarded as a great quarterback unless he can become a pocket style passer. And that was the thought process of everybody at that stage. So it has advanced somewhat, and you don't have as much as that. But, you know, this idea of, and then you have this weird ecosystem around Jalen Hurts where you have, you know, what the people in the chat here call the Jalenites who defend him no matter what. And you got the belief that people are lying and making up things, and Jeremy Fowler and Tim McManus aren't making up things. And anybody who's listened to this show has heard these same things year over year, and I get the same stuff. Why do you hate Jalen? Nobody hates Jalen. I constantly compliment him. I say right now, you know, he's your quarterback. Take advantage of your quarterback. Don't hamstring. Look, how I boil it down is, does this make any sense whatsoever? I'm going to give you a statement. Let's build an offense built around things our quarterback is deficient in. Does that make any sense?
Zero.
At any level?
0 sense. As a matter of fact, the opposite is true. A successful manager or a successful coach or a successful CEO will be the strength of where the individual is weakest. They're not going to shift. You're not going to ask your star to do something they're not capable of doing. You're going to feed your star the things that he can do to get success.
And that's what they've done for 5 years, and for some reason they're hell-bent on changing it. Well, you know, obviously we know why. I'm not trying to. I've been one of the ones saying it. I said, you know, if the Eagles lose against the Rams in 2024 in the divisional round after the 24 season, so January of 25, you know, all we're talking about in the offseason is how bad the passing game was. All we're talking about. And we didn't talk about it at all because they went on to win the Super Bowl. But it was there. It wasn't fixed. It was there. And then it continued, obviously, and things didn't end well in 2025. But I do find it ironic, and Jeffrey Lurie even mentioned this talking at the owners' meetings. You know, they were the only team in the NFL to be a repeat division champion. They won 11 games. Even with all these problems, they made the postseason again for a 5th consecutive year. Like, they act like a 5-win team. I tell Zander all the time. They act like they won 5 games. And they did all that, and nobody knows better than the people down at, and I have to catch myself, the Jefferson Health Training Center. Nobody knows better why they only won 11 games. And that's because Lane Johnson got hurt, and Landon Dickerson wasn't healthy, and Cam Jurgens wasn't healthy. That's why. Now, did the passing game stink? Yeah, it always stinks. Was it ugly? It's always ugly. Was it consistent? It's always inconsistent. Is there a lot of one-on-ones? It's always been a lot of one-on-ones. AJ, go win. Devontae, go win. Would you prefer to have the best of both worlds? Sure. You'd prefer to be able to run for 2,500 yards and be able to have a Bill Walsh offense that can dip a West Coast masterpiece out of their you-know-what and at the biggest moments. But that's not real. That's not realistic. So if you look at their success and how quickly they've wavered off it, like, oh, well, people have caught up to us. I'm like, what is that? Where's the confidence? Where's the swagger? This used to be the most, I always use the term hubris. They think they're better than everybody. And all of a sudden, they wake up one day and they like, oh my God, everybody's caught up to us.
I heard Dan Sileo say the other day on his show that Jalen was going to throw for 3,200 yards and have 14 picks. Now, I'm not debating Dan's opinion. I respect his opinion. But my point is, just for a moment, let's take those. If that is a reality, that's not Jalen Hurts' fault. That's the CEO's fault. That's the coach's fault. That's the organization's fault. I'd rather have the team win ugly and have the team win with what Jalen can do than try and change him into something he's not. And until you show me, and again, just my opinion, until you show me that what he can do, what his strengths are no longer viable in the modern NFL, in today's game, I'm not signing up for that. I'll take 3,200 yards from Jalen Hurts if they win 12 games and go deep into the playoffs. I don't need 4,000 yards from him and an exit in round one for what? To say that he's a pocket passer, like that. That's the part of it. And I don't mean to get so long-winded on it, but that's the part of it that I don't understand.
Well, he had 3,200 yards last year. You know, that's not even a big number. He had 32-24 last year, and they had one of the worst passing attacks in the league. So yeah, you got to have a much higher volume when you talk about. I mean, there's guys who throw for 4,500. You know, I mean,
how many yards did Jalen throw for when they won the Super Bowl?
2903.
So 2903 in 24, I guess, right? 29.
Yeah.
29.
Now he played 15 games. Had the concussion, sat out. So he had 2,903. Last year, he missed the one game, week 18. He had 32-24, 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Like, if you look at his numbers are fine. But you know, to be fair, and that's why I'm not a big numbers guy, because if you look at his numbers, that's pretty good. And they're a good team. They won 11 games. But, you know, the passing offense is not, it's not great, to put it kindly. It is not inventive. You know, I don't really care about motion and things like that. Some quarterbacks like it, some quarterbacks don't. He doesn't like it. So big deal. Nobody complains when Phillip Rivers doesn't like it. They go, oh, Phillip Rivers, don't worry about it. Peyton Manning didn't like it. No, everybody's like, oh, well, it's Peyton Manning. For some reason, it's a big problem with Jalen Hurts. You know, again, to me, the issue is why, and maybe that's the wrong word. I said deficiencies. Maybe the better word is, you know, the quarterback isn't comfortable with certain things. Why would you build an offense around the things he's uncomfortable with? It just, at its base level, it doesn't make sense. Nobody told Peyton Manning, hey, you got to do this. Nobody told Phillip Rivers, hey, you got to do this. This guy's proven enough to the point where either, you know, build it around him or don't, which is fine. If you think you can go be better and more consistent in a different way, that's fine. But understand, you're not maximizing him while he's here, which is strange to me. It's strange that they're trying to go down this route. Now, again, you have to get the running game back involved. He's got it. He's got to be on board with that. If he's not on board with that, it is time to move on.
Well, when you say running game, you mean what? You mean Jalen?
The quarterback aspect of it.
Yeah, the quarterback.
The +1 aspect of the running game, which makes things so difficult on the defense. If he's not on board with getting that back into it full bore, well, then you probably do want to move on, to be honest, because he's not going to be the same player.
Well,
and then
he's the player he is because of his ability to go off script, right?
Well, yeah, that's a big part of it. But
I mean, how many times, John, and even last year, and I remember from doing the green zone, Jalen will off script get 14 yards and pick up a first down when everything was collapsing on him. You're not talking about that. You're talking about a running.
No, I'm talking about.
You're talking about an offense where he's calling his own number.
Well, no, not even necessarily that. You just have, like last year, people knew he wasn't going to run as much, so you don't have that. What you want to do is put the defense in conflict, and specifically, RPOs, RPRs, as the Eagles will call them, where they have the option to run, pass, run. And then you're basically just reading one defender and putting him in conflict. But the point is, if that defender knows, hey, the quarterback's not going to run the ball, and if he does, he's going to slide down after 2 yards, it doesn't put them in conflict, and it makes it easier to play defense. So that's a big part of it. The off schedule stuff I don't worry about from a coaching standpoint, because that's off schedule. That's the beauty of having a quarterback when everything breaks down, and that's the advantage that a Josh Allen or a Jalen Hurts or a Lamar Jackson has over a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning, because when things break down, they can go make something out of nothing. But there's coaching points to it, scramble drills. The receivers want to keep themselves alive and things like that. But, when you're playing sandlot football, that's just sort of gravy on top of it, and he can make something out of nothing. Now, there's good and bad to that as too. He holds on to the football too long. That, to me, the things I want Jalen Hurts to evolve at, when it is there, throw the football. He holds on to the football too much. And that's A.J. Brown's frustration, mainly. When it's there, but the second part is they battened it down in his head so much to be risk averse. That's part of it. They in 2024 they came to the conclusion, look, we can run the ball so effectively. If we don't turn it over, we're going to win. And they were right. But that's a really small margin of error.
Well, NFL analytics, I guess, will tell you,
Yeah, but
if you don't turn the football over, if you don't there's 5 plays in every game that make the difference in the outcome, unless it's a blowout or something like that. There's 5 pivotal plays in a football game that everybody's gonna talk about when when the final score is posted, win or lose, whether you win on a last-second field goal, get stopped on the 2-yard line, whatever it is. But inevitably, one of those at the end of the game and the beginning of the game, as a key to the game, is don't turn over the football. So if Jalen is being told or coached to not turn over the football, so that and by being coached that limits some of what he's willing to do or evolve into doing. What's wrong with that? If he doesn't turn over the football,
there's nothing wrong. It's a fine line though, because you want to have you want to have an explosive offense. And how do you have an explosive offense? Well, you got to throw the football, and if you throw the football, you're going to put it in harm's way at times. And there's the greatest show on turf, Rams are the best example of that. If you get so good at it, you can overcome a turnover or two, and you will overcome, and you'll win 42-14 And as they so often would blow people out. Now, that's the high end of the spectrum. The low end of the spectrum for successful teams is the Eagles, who do it in a conservative fashion, which is not as exciting, but it worked. But where's the greater margin of error? The greater margin of error, well, the Rams could turn it over and still go blow you out. The Eagles turn it over, they were going to lose. It's about margin of error from the standpoint of coaches. You want the larger margin of error. And that's where the Eagles, you saw it last year. Well, why couldn't they just run it back? They tried to run it back. That's exactly what they do. Well, forget about the turnover. You get a couple injury, and that margin of error is nothing. Turns to dust. They got a bunch of injuries on the offensive line. They're cooked because they couldn't toggle away and make up for it with the passing game. And Jalen Hurts himself has said it. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. They don't use it, and they lost it. The passing game. And now you sort of have to undo. And again, not this overemphasis on risk aversion. It's a fine line. You don't want to throw 4 interceptions just because you're throwing for 400 yards. So nobody's saying it's easy. And now that they've beaten it into his head, it might be the toothpaste might be out of the tube. But you got to try to, again, when you talk about his struggles in zone coverage in college, you're just throwing open receivers all the time. In the NFL, unless somebody blows the coverage, those windows are closing quickly. So if you're a tick late getting the ball out, open turns into not open. You saw that on the 4 Birds play that everybody complains about at the end of the season. Dallas Goedert was open. Short time. Very short time. But if that ball comes out on time, and it's a Nolan Ryan fastball, so there's a lot to it. Completion. Very short. And as soon as it hesitated a tick, there's 3 defenders because they were ready for the play. And it was a misread as well because AJ had one-on-one on the other side, and he should have just done the 50-50 ball. But, if the ball doesn't come out in the NFL, and you see it all the time, watch any game, late throws, bad things happen. Interceptions, tip balls. If you're late, bad things are going to happen.
Last thing, Johnny Mac, on Jalen, and then I have to actually take a commercial break because one, shout out to JAKIB Nation for being in the chat. I know Zander's very active in the chat. I got to take my glasses off every time I want to read the chat, so I'll try and catch up to that during the break. And I pulled an absolute Krause's Law during this opening segment. And you've been on live remotes with me before. You know that Krause's Law in broadcast is to never have food or drink around the broadcast.
That's true. Well, you don't want to spill anything.
Bad taboo. I spilled my coffee in that first segment. So in front of me here, I got coffee on the desk. It's driving me crazy. I got to clean that up, but I'll do that. I'll do that during the break. But last transitional thought into Jalen, then into the thinking or the thought process of saying we're not giving Jalen he's not getting an extension now. And I think in the beginning you said, well, that's not really that big of a deal. That's not a message. That's just the way it is. Or is it after listening to you in this opening segment, Is it that this team is now deciding that this might be it for they're going to move on from Jalen Hurts?
Well, I'm not going to go that far. As I mentioned, Lamar Jackson, I think it might have been Herbert. It might have been Burrow, Herbert. I think those were the three who signed at a similar time. Jalen signed first, and then Lamar was like 10 days later. None of those guys have gotten extensions yet. So, and not all contracts are the same. So it's not a fair comparison, but it is his last year. He's under contract through 2028, but it's his last year where everything is fully guaranteed. So his full guarantees end after this year. So all that means is, extension time is definitely next March. Now, if they had a need for cap space, they could rework his deal early and things like that. But they've been able to get plenty of cap space from just what they've done, so they haven't needed to use that lever, so to speak. And then I do think part of it is they want to see how he handles the shift. And more than being successful and being a total Kyle Shanahan offense, is he willing to try? Is he willing to try? And I think if he's not willing to try, then some bad things could happen.
But if he's willing to try, and let's say that he is, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Yeah, I'll try again. With the new offense, with the Shanahan offense. Yeah, let's give a go with it. Then why are we having a conversation about A.J. Brown potentially moving on? Why is that even possible? Why would the best receiver on the field be up for grabs when you want your quarterback to evolve into becoming a more high-powered offense? Why? It doesn't make any sense to me. If A.J. Brown is traded, or if A.J. Brown departs or leaves because he's unhappy, because he whined, all of that. By the way, that's Nick Sirianni. All of that whining from A.J. Brown and everything else, you know who I hold accountable for that? The CEO, the head coach. And if the CEO can't keep an employee in line, or if the employee can't conform to the policy or the direction of the company, in this case it's a football team, yeah, then can him, fire him, get rid of him, get rid of that employee. But if he's an integral part of this new offense, why is it even a conversation? Because who are you going to replace him with? Who's going to come in and replace A.J. Brown?
Well, no, but you're not going to replace the talent. But I always go back, and I've said it a bunch. People are probably tired of it, but I love the Mike Tomlin quote, so I'm going to give it again. And that's what you want: volunteers. You don't want hostages. And he doesn't want to be here. That's the only reason they're likely going to trade him. Certainly, people around the league thinks he's essentially gone. The Eagles, Jeffrey Lurie, you heard, he didn't exactly. Nobody quelled it out in Phoenix. The thought is now, there's still the door. Howie's stubborn, and if he doesn't get what he wants, he'll keep it. But it's probably not going to end well either way. But it's going to end. So I don't think I don't like the business comparison, only because sports isn't like a regular business. Obviously, there's a lot more money involved. There's a lot more ego involved. These guys are superstars. So it's not like, treating them like Bob in accounting. I also like the Jimmy Johnson quote of, talking about Emmitt Smith. He said, I'll treat you all fairly, but I'm not going to treat you all the same. So, guys get treated differently by their stature in the game. And he doesn't want to be here. So ultimately, if somebody doesn't want to be here, you can hold them hostage. He's under contract. Is it going to work out well? Usually not. And I think the Eagles realize that.
Birds 365 with John McMullen and Zander Krause. Alexander James Krause. I'm sitting in for Zander today. Let me make sure that I can. Let me make sure I can do this, John. We're going to take a commercial break, JAKIB Nation. I've got a coffee spill to take care of. I got to hit the head.
I had a famous coffee spill at Lincoln Financial Field. People still talk about. We call it the incident.
Wow, tell me about that.
No, I just spilled coffee.
Spilled coffee. What, in the box?
Yeah, in the press box.
We'll take a break here on Birds 365 on the JAKIB Sports Network. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Birds 365. Johnny Mac, coming back out of the break, tell me what show number this is in the history of Birds 365. I know you already know the answer.
I don't. I haven't. When we were getting close to 1,000, I would pay attention. But now that we passed it, I know we're coming up. We're coming up on what, 5 years?
Yeah. Look it up in the break. We'll take a break. It's Birds 365, presented by Fritz Bianculli. We're back in a moment.
Welcome to the Jet Setters and the High Rollers, to the Shot Takers and the Tastemakers. Welcome to the Viewfinders, the Thrill Seekers, and the Night Owls. Welcome to everything you could possibly want on one 5-mile island. Welcome to the Wildwoods. Book your stay today.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
In our hometown, we all look out for each other. We go the extra mile to lend a helping hand. We step up to keep our communities going strong. And at Independence Blue Cross, we're here to keep you going strong. We've been deeply rooted in our communities for more than 85 years. And that connection to members has earned us our spot as the #1 health insurer in the region. So while you look out for your neighbors, know IBX is always looking out for you.
Your financial future is on the line. Are you ready for what's next? At Leone & Company Wealth Management, we help young professionals, business owners, and pre-retirees navigate the complexities of building and protecting wealth. For young professionals, we'll help you grow your wealth, plan for your future, and make the most of your hard-earned dollars. For business owners, we provide strategies to protect your company, manage risks, and create a lasting legacy for both your business and personal wealth. For pre-retirees, we'll design a plan to secure your retirement, ensuring you can live comfortably and confidently in your next chapter. Whether you're just starting out, managing a thriving business, or preparing for retirement, we're here to help you take control of your financial future. The first consultation is on us. Get the advice you need without the cost. Let's make your financial vision a reality. Take the next step. Scan the QR code to schedule your free consultation today. And of course, go Birds.
Welcome to the Jet Setters and the High Rollers, to the Thrill Seekers and the Night Owls. Welcome to everything you could possibly want on one 5-mile island. Welcome to the Wildwoods. Book your stay today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
And back here on Birds 365 across the JAKIB Sports Network, along with John McMullen, I'm Joe Krause in for Zander Krause today. Shout out to JAKIB Nation for being with us on this Good Friday. It's a very solemn day, a very holy day for us, for those who are Christians celebrating, Catholics and Christians celebrating the Easter season. And today, a solemn day, the crucifixion of our Lord Jesus Christ. So we appreciate you being here on this Good Friday. I'm in for Zander. John McMullen is here. He's always here. Answer to the question, John, the episode number now.
Well, now I have a question to ask, by the way, because according to the site, YouTube, everybody can watch us at JAKIB Sports. According to the podcast, we're 1357. Now, however, our show started before Dan's show, and Dan has somehow gotten ahead of us. How is that possible?
Well, what are you looking at? Podcast downloads?
Well, if you go to the YouTube page, the podcast section is what I would usually go by. And it says 1,357 episodes. But I know we started before Dan's show, and we were ahead of Dan because I was paying attention when it came up to 1,000. Now we're behind Dan in number of podcasts.
Yeah, the only way that I think that well, I'm not disputing the number if the number's there. The only way that could now occur if the podcast is being posted in segments instead of totality or hours, maybe that changes the dynamic.
Maybe ours. This show is longer, so maybe that. But yeah, I don't know. But it says 1,357 episodes. What do you have a different number?
I've got to look. I was counting on you.
All right. I thought you had. I
always got an update from you. In terms of where we.
This is where we get the updates. This is what I've always used.
Okay.
So this is
we'll work on the number. We'll work on that number because I think it's important. I think it's a very. I think it's a strong tribute to Birds 365, strong tribute, of course, to you, Johnny Mac, strong tribute to the community of JAKIB Nation. I got to tell you, I was out talking to a group of different owners of different sports bars around the Delaware Valley, because you've been there. I think you were there at least once or twice. We do on Thursday nights, and we're going into year 7 now. We do the countdown to kickoff show from Screwballs over in King of Prussia, and the coach Henry Racich, AJ Snyder joined the live show this year. He'll be back next year again, and so I've always wanted, in addition to doing a Thursday night countdown to kickoff show, I've always wanted to do a Monday night show. Remember, we used to do the Monday night show at the Mark, right? So I'm like, I want to get back to that. I want to do a Monday night show. So I've been talking to a lot of different owners of different sports bars, and I was in person yesterday in a conversation with the owner from Bailey's Pub up in Bucks County, and he had the JAKIB show on his phone when I showed up unannounced. He didn't know I was coming in. So a really, really cool tribute to JAKIB Nation. It's just a tribute to the audience and to the loyalty that we have from our community, which, by the way, I will take a pause. I will pause for a second just to say, Johnny Mac, that our JAKIB tailgate for the 2026 home opener this season is going to be absolutely, absolutely incredible. And it's just going to be great to bring all of JAKIB Nation together, those that jumped on board. By the way, I had 4 different members of JAKIB Nation, and I'm not going to out them, but they signed up. They signed up for a pair of tickets each, and they left me hanging. They never bought the tickets.
Oh boy,
so I'm sitting on 8. I'm sitting on 8 left. I'm sure I'll get rid of those. Text me at 267-261-3428 if you want to grab a pair. I got 8 tickets, 4 pairs left. Just because 4 people, for whatever reason, it is what it is. People change their minds, so I'm okay with that. But that tailgate is going to be absolutely unbelievable. Down at the stadium, hopefully get you to stop by on your way into the stadium. We'll be down there. Might use the flatbed setup like we did for the Eagles parade, where we were set up on the flatbed, parked on the apron down at City Hall. So I might go with that setup, or the company that's helping me manage some of the details in terms of location and everything else. I may just set up a riser just to get the broadcast up off the ground a little bit and then fill everything in. But it's going to be phenomenal. Great food, great tailgate. The seats everybody's going to get a seat to go to the stadium, to go into the game. That's part of the tailgate. So it's going to be a really, really great time. I'm super excited about doing that. But that's all part of JAKIB Nation, part of you, John, part of what Zander's doing, part of everybody that's ever been a part of Birds 365. So anyway, that's a long-winded way.
And I've been promised Humpty Dumplings, so I'm looking forward to that.
Humpty's Dumplings will not only be at the tailgate, but they are going to become an even bigger part of JAKIB Nation this year than they were in their first year. And their first year was the process of the season and working through it and figuring out how to engage. They'll be on location. My good friend from Port Richmond, Chevs, of course, John unexpectedly passed away, but the history of Chevs, the world's best kobase, they will be on location. We'll have lots of great stuff down at the food-wise down at the tailgate. But those 2 elements, Chevs being specific, I've got a very, very deep connection with John, who, as you know, passed away. But so I look forward to that. That's going to be a great home opener. Whenever that is, the schedule release is in May. So once that comes out, we'll know when the home game is going, when the first home or when the home opener is going to be. I don't think it's going to be during the week, John. It's not going to be on a Wednesday or a Thursday. We know that, right?
Yeah, at least. Hopefully it's Sunday at 1:00. That's your best case scenario. But
yeah, that's
we
what
know the Eagles are of high value. So you're going to have a lot of night games, a lot of primetime games. So that's just the nature of it. But yeah, so and if you want to add, by the way, if you want to add football 24/7 in, there's 490. So we're coming up on 2,000 shows. And some of it's not branded that way. So we're probably over 2,000, but we're closing in.
Yeah.
2,000.
John, we're not closing in. This show is setting the benchmark, not only in this market. And again, it's a pyramid, right? Or a 3-legged bar stool. It's the show, it's the community, and it's the content, And those 3 things collectively, whether you agree with, by the way, whether you agree or not, and just look at the chat, the beauty of being able to be here is your opinion is validated or welcome, whether you agree with us or not. Not me. I'm not here very often, but whether you agree with John or agree with Zander, whether you like Dan Cilio or don't like Dan Cilio, we're not going to control your thought process. But so that's the tribute, and I think that's one of the reasons why the show has had such tremendous standing in the market. But that was a great reminder to walk in unannounced on a call it in sales, call it a cold call, right? Hey, I want to tell you about Bert. I want to tell you about JAKIB Sports.
Well, I'll tell you, I have that
on the phone, John. It's on his phone.
When I traveled, when I was traveling, I didn't travel last year, but when I was traveling, I never went to a hotel or on a flight where somebody didn't come up and say, I listened to you on Birds 365, which is, there's 2 seconds where you're like, all right, is this guy going to be pissed off at me?
Well,
but 99% of the people are tremendously nice. You talk about, doing those live remotes with Colin Thompson a lot of times, our old buddy Colin Thompson. Yeah, they were a lot of fun.
No doubt, man.
And there was never, I'd just be walking through the lobby of certain hotel in certain city. And, because Eagles fans travel like maniacs. Always. My Uber driver in Phoenix was just the guy picking me up in the Uber. Listen to Birds 365.
I love it. I love it so much, man. And it is so spot on and so true. John, there's a husband and wife coming in for the tailgate who are Eagles fans, and they are coming in from Indiana. And her husband has never been to an Eagles game. And he's obviously a watcher, a follower of JAKIB Sports, and he watches Birds 365. They're coming in for the game. We have so many people that are coming in from outside of the market. I'm actually setting up. I don't want to call it a block of rooms like we're doing a wedding, but I'm actually setting up with a hotel a discounted rate for people that are coming in from out of town. One, so they can get a room. Eagles weekends, notoriously, hotel rooms get really tight. And two, so they have an opportunity to do it and to be part of it. So again, it's going to be a super dynamic home opener, and hopefully, as you said, and that's what I'm hoping, that Sunday, which I don't know if that's the 13th or 14th, whatever it is. That's what I'm hoping for. Back here on Birds 365. Super chats go to the top. I'll get those up. I did scroll through some of the comments in the chat. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Remember, I got to take my glasses off, John, to read. Greg S. says, and I think it's a good question, if a prolific passing offense is so important, why do those teams rarely win? Every year, an elite or top 5 defense wins it every year. You say what, Johnny Matt?
Yeah, I don't like any generalizations, because the idea that you got to win a certain way has been proven, wrong. Basically, the Eagles won a different way than the Seahawks. The Seahawks, somebody sprang. Well, a top tier wide receiver never wins a Super Bowl. Well, Jackson Smith and Jigba just won the Super Bowl. Is the NFL Offensive Player of the Year. The year prior, Saquon Barkley won the Super Bowl with 2,504 yards or whatever as a running back. That doesn't mean you have to have a 2,500 yard running back, because there's never been one before. So, there's different ways to win defensively. And it's, that's why they call it the ultimate team game. Usually the teams that win are good. Seattle was good defensively. Philadelphia was good. You're not going to win a Super Bowl being bad defensively. You're also not going to win a Super Bowl being bad offensively. Now, the Eagles' passing game had some issues in 2024, but again, they had a historic running game, literally historic, making up for it. You don't win Super Bowls by being bad. So what teams though have come to, and the Eagles are in this category as well. Everybody's in this category. Again, it's about margin of error. So when you have the ability to have a high octane passing game, you have a larger margin of error. That's all it's about. It's very difficult to win Super Bowl. A lot of things have to line up. The stars have to align. Number one, you got to stay healthy. That's number one every year. Who's healthiest? If there's one thing that correlates between all Super Bowl champions, they're all relatively healthy. Their main pieces are together. That's the one thing that probably translates more than anything. And that's something obviously you can't control. But yeah, there's a million different ways to win. And yeah, people who I don't like that. Well, they won because Jackson Smith and Jigba this year. They won because of Saquon Barkley. Well, the game was 24-0 because Kansas City didn't get past the 50-yard line till 2 minutes was left in the third quarter. I think the defense had a big part of it as well. Jalen Hurts was Super Bowl MVP. Again, the defense was the Super Bowl MVP. There's a lot of different ways to win. But yeah, you're never winning with a bad defense. That's fair to say.
Q the God says, can't wait for the tailgate. Are the seats together? Your seats will be together, Q, and we'll have JAKIB Nation as close to each other in all of the different sections. That's a whole other process, by the way, of managing the tickets. Fortunately, I have a lot of good experience in figuring out tickets and everything else. So everyone, I can guarantee, unconditional guarantee, in a world where there are very few guarantees, I can guarantee that this event will be 100% successful, even if shit happens, even if unexpected shit comes up. We'll manage through anything and everything, and it'll be a great time again for the home opener. Hey, you brought up the defense, John, and I did want to get into that because that is my, there's so much noise going on with A.J. Brown and the ESPN story. Matter of fact, I shot AJ Snyder. I want to give him a shout out. I just mentioned him. He's my co-host on Countdown to Kickoff on Thursday nights. This year was his first year, and he'll be back next year. And I said to him, "Hey, I'm on with Johnny Mac tomorrow because he's a big watcher of Birds 365. I'm on with Johnny Mac tomorrow for doing Birds 365. What's the headlines? What's happening? Well, let me give him full credit here. Let me pull him up. So this was AJ's. This was his outline of headlines. It was the AJ Brown trade speculation. He thinks it's the biggest story of the offseason. It was what we talked about in that opening segment. He called it Jalen Hurts is at a crossroads. The defensive rebuild after the departures seemed to be one of his biggest concerns. And you just, in talking about the defense and even referencing how well the defense was in that Super Bowl win I guess it'll be two seasons ago now. How much of a concern, John, is there with the current situation on the defensive side of the ball? We know I think there's going to be challenges, and even bigger challenges on offense, because we're not going to replace AJ. AJ wants to leave. I get it. You're going to cut bait and you're going to move on. But we're not going to replace AJ Brown. as that number one receiver, or at least I don't think we are. I guess we're going to put somebody there. Are they going to be A.J. Brown? What does that mean when A.J.'s not there? What does that mean for Devontae Smith? They've tried multiple times on a wide receiver 3. They just can't seem to. They either don't value a wide receiver 3, or they just can't get the right.
Different style. Remember, different style. In theory, with this style, it'll be more important to have a wide receiver 3. And they did bring in Hollywood Brown, but defensively, I mean, they lost a key player at each level, but they expected to lose. The only one they were hoping to maintain was Jalen Phillips. They knew they were going to lose Nakobe Dean. They thought they were going to lose Reed Blankenship. The only issue there is they thought he was going to get 8 figures. So they thought he was going to be a $10, $11 million player. He only got 8.25 or whatever he got. So, Howie was asked about that and said, sometimes I think one of the, and it's natural, but I think everybody judges these moves in a vacuum. Like, they lost Reed Blankenship, or they lost Nakobe Dean, and they don't realize the whole big mosaic of what Howie's trying to do, which sometimes it doesn't even come to fruition. So, you have the plan, and where I think he sets himself apart is the contingencies, and we're going to see. But I think the key is Jalen Phillips. How do you replace Jalen Phillips? Overall, the defense is in very good shape because they have a bunch of young stars. Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, even if you want to count Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Zach Bond, not as young, but doesn't have a lot of tread off the tire because he didn't play in New Orleans. Jahad Campbell's ready to go. That's why they let Nakobe Dean had shoulder surgery, but he will be ready to go. And Drew Makuba coming back. So those are all very young players, with the exception of Bond, and very good young players. So, I mean, even though they lost the starter on all 3 levels, I still, if I'm an Eagles fan, I'm way more comfortable with the defense than the offense.
Were they caught off guard on losing Phillips, John, or did they know that? Did they didn't expect to lose him? Did they expect this? Did they expect to go with him?
He was their priority to get back. The hope was that they would get, and you probably, if you were paying attention to when free agency opened, there was a lot of stuff that, it's close right before the start of free agency. And the belief was, but if you don't get it done before and they get to the open market, that's what happens. They had a number, and Carolina went to $30 million. And is he a $30 million player? No. But that's sort of, when you get players like that and they hit free agency, you're at the risk of somebody overpaying, and that's what happened. And they haven't been able to replace him to date. They signed a couple rotational players in free agency, Arnold Ebiketie and Joe Tryon, a couple, guys who could be 3rd or 4th rotational rushers, but they still need the headliner on the pass rush, and they'll get it. Can't tell you when, can't tell you where, but they understand it's a need. But everybody in this league has needs, and on defense, they have less needs than most people, I would say.
Well, they certainly, I would say Howie, certainly, sometimes I feel as though he makes moves to make moves.
Well, yeah. Well, it's very layered.
Because I don't necessarily see the end result of success from the move, that he's made. But I kind of feel as though, and I could be off base with this, but I kind of feel as though it's more important now Howie Roseman's impact on this team is more important now than ever before, or than in the last 5 years, because you're going to lose a talent on offense. You're going to have to find a way to compete in the league and win games that you're not supposed to win, given the scenario. And I don't think they have a lot of depth. So I think he's got to make the right moves, and whether it's the draft or whatever it is. I'm not questioning Howie Roseman. He's much smarter than I am, but I'm just saying I think his thumbprint on whether this team is successful or not in the 26th season is going to point right at him. I don't think it's going to point at Nick Sirianni, because Nick's going along with the program. I think it all comes down to Howie Roseman, win, lose, or draw, on what he's able to do in terms of providing the right talent and replacing the talent that they've lost. I remember coming out of the Super Bowl, I felt like they let too many people go. I get it. I don't understand all the math and everything else, so you can't keep everyone. But I felt like they did. That I felt like was the first shot on the defense. I don't know what the ultimate end. I don't know where the defense ultimately ended up ranking last year. Further down than they were the previous year, and now I think they're further down from where they were last year. So the only way to get back to the Mendoza line, or get back to raise the bar, is to fill in the right pieces. And that's why I think Howie might be more important. His work or his decision, whether it's draft, trade, whatever it is, will determine the success of the team.
Well, I mean, he's the architect of the roster, and it's a talent-driven league. Now, the perception is the Eagles have had the most talent in the NFL over the past number of years. I think that started to change last year, mainly because of the offense. Again, not the defense. They're very well equipped because they've drafted so well. But all the drafts, you know, the last 5 years, their premium picks have been off the charts good. But they've all been mainly on defense. The only offensive players they've drafted are Cam Jurgens in the second round in 2022, Tyler Steen in the third round in 2023. Both starters, both effective. Cam's made the Pro Bowl. Obviously had some injury issues, still made the Pro Bowl. Shouldn't have, but still did. But so everybody else, you got to go back to 2021. Since 2022, it's been all defense. It's been Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalix Hunt, Jihad Campbell, Drew Makuba. All defense, all good players. Like they're set on defense. Don't worry about the defense. The issue is the offense. The offense is aging. They need to repopulate it. They understand that. Howie's even verbalized that. They have to start drafting offense, and they will. They haven't had a first-round pick on offense since Devontae Smith. It's been a long time in football parlance. That's a long time.
Well, they made the draft trade. They made the A.J. Brown trade.
You can see. So the perception is, one of the problems, and Jeffrey talked about this, Jeffrey Lurie talked, was the expectations. The expectations are built on the point where they were the most talented offensive football, to the point where they got to the point where they got the contracts they got. Now, I think and Zander and I have talked about this a lot. You look at their 11 starters on offense last year. only one, in my opinion, and I put Tyler Steen off to the side because he wasn't a starter the previous season. Only one maintained, forgot about getting better. Only one maintained his sort of status, and that was Devontae Smith. Everybody else got worse for different reasons. Every single other offensive player got worse. Some of it was injury, Lane, Cam, Landon. Some of it was Jordan Mailata was so good in 2024. He was just really good in 2025. He's still a top-tier player, but couldn't live up to what he did in 2024. Saquon couldn't live up to what he did in 2024. It's not possible. AJ had his worst season as an Eagle. Jalen, we're having the problems because he didn't play well. Every single offensive player got worse except Devontae Smith. And they're now another year older.
And by the way, with the exception of one starter, everyone else on offense won the Super Bowl in 24.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're bringing it, and they're running it back again. And they probably shouldn't, but they can't because of the contracts. They can't change anything because of the contracts, because of how highly paid they are. So you're going to get the same narratives of this is the most talented offensive football. Well, it's not. It was at one point. It's not now. But that's a tough conversation for people to have.
Is it injury age, or coaching that has caused taken the same formula, the same recipe, and has become worse? Injury, I guess, or
injury. Well, it depends. Individual injury for the offensive line. I mean, Lane, Cam, Landon, even Jordan was banged up. A lot of injury related issues with the offensive line
and no depth, right?
Well, actually, some of the guys, Brett Toth did a pretty good job, and Fred Johnson did a pretty good job. So, but backups are backups for a reason. They're not as good as the starters. But I thought the depth was pretty good, actually. Now Dallas had people think he had a career year because he had a bunch of touchdowns, but he really descended as a blocker, which became a big issue for the Eagles when they couldn't get the running game going. Saquon, who knows? There's something to keep an eye on because he had so many touches in 2024. Did it impact him as it typically has for running backs who touch it that much? They typically have a sharp decline. Or was it because the offensive line was not good in front of them? That's got to be the hope there. AJ, there's some injury related there. His knee has been a problem for years. That cropped up again. He had hamstring issues, plus the frustration with the offense. And Jalen, we talked about a lot. So it's not all just injury. It's a combination, like it usually is. It's a combination of things. It's injury. It's declining players. It's a bunch of different things, but it's probably not going to get better with certain players. Landon Dickerson with his health status, it's probably not getting better. Dallas Goedert at his age, it's probably not getting better. Lane Johnson with his age, it's probably not getting better.
Do you think the Stoutland not being there will have a big impact in a negative way for this offense?
Well, it depends how you frame it. He didn't want to do what they're doing on offense. So he's sort of like the Jalen Hurts version of the coaching staff. Like, he was uncomfortable doing what they wanted to do in the running game on offense and shifting to where they want to go, which is a lot of stretch, wide zone rushing attack versus what they would do under him, which was more power based, more duo, more pin and pull, more gap. That they've had tremendous success.
I would argue then, based on that Stoutland would know the strength of who he's coaching. He would know the strength of the line. Back to the beginning of this Birds 365. The job of the coach is to know the strength of your player or players and feed that strength so they can have success. So if Stoutland understands or knows the strength of his offensive line, which he gets credit for all of their success, definitely Jordan Mailata, if he gets credit for all of that, then why would they want to change and go against what the coach already knows is the strength of the offense, which you just identified? What those?
Well, I don't think they do. Well, again, it all harkens back to where I sort of reverse course from where they think they are, is they think teams have caught up to them. And I think it's about lack of execution, lack of, I don't think, in other words, when Lane Johnson is clicking on all cylinders and Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson's healthy and Cam Jurgens is healthy, I don't give a shit if you know what they're doing. You know what they're doing because they do the same thing. You ain't stopping it if they're executing, as you saw the year prior. So I think it has more to do with the injuries than it has to do with people catching up. Their thought process was, look, teams were very cognizant of what they did the year prior, and they were selling out to stop Saquon Barkley. He had all these negative runs, negative plays. 1st and 10 would turn into 2nd and 12, 2nd and 13. And then you're behind the 8 ball because you can't pass the ball. That's what happened last year. You want to boil it down to the simplest form, that's what happened. They got in bad situations on 2nd and 3rd downs. They don't have a passing game equipped to overcome it. That's exactly what happened. So when the run game fell apart, the offense fell apart. Now, the question is, why did the run game fall apart? Now, Nick Sirianni wanted to change during the season and did change. He's the head coach. That's his right. A lot of people don't understand that like Jeff Stoutland, for all his brilliance, was never in charge of the Eagles' run game, ever. That was the offensive coordinator and Nick Sirianni. That's how it works. It goes up the chain. And the Eagles decided to do more under center work, more trying to get Saquon Barkley options, because when you're in the shotgun all the time, you're offset as a running back, and it sort of limits where you're going to be able to go. Teams were selling out to stop it, understanding where it was going to go. And to be fair, the running game got better, not as good as it was the year prior, but it got better when they did make the changes and went under center more. It did get, as Saquon Barkley later in the season actually got better. Still not good enough. So the Eagles wanted to go full bore into that system, how they got better. And Jeff didn't. And that's what it came down to. And look, there's a lot of good about Jeff Stoutland, but he's also been propped up as and there's some ego involved there when you are put on a pedestal. And the bottom line is the head coach always had the card. And if you don't like it, you got to go. And he didn't like it, and he's gone. That's what happened with Jeff Stoutland.
Well,
I mean, the head coach has always been in charge of the running game. It's just there was no reason to change until last year. And their belief, and maybe it's wrong, Nick's belief, and maybe it's wrong, is, again, and if you ask me, I would actually agree it's wrong. Their belief is teams caught up to them and they had to change.
The previous year, John, I can go back and I can watch every Eagles post-game show from the previous season to last season, so from the Super Bowl winning season. And one of the specific characteristics of the offense that you pointed out, used the game sheet to be able to validate it, was long, sustaining drives in the second half after grabbing the lead and never having to worry about fighting their way, or rarely fighting their way into the game. Get the lead, let the offense run the ball, chew up the clock, go on 14, 15, 16 play drives, whatever they were, get the first downs. And they did that in a way that was driven or fueled, obviously, from Saquon having a big year and everything else. But they did it because of the offensive line. And so why move away from that? Stoutland probably shouldn't have. Stoutland shouldn't have a say in the running game. But Stoutland should be able to say, hey, this offensive line is best doing this. That's what you should do. And your offense isn't going to work with the pieces that are on this offensive line. And that's what happened. That's what the end result of last year was.
But again, now the Eagles' belief is, look, their offensive line in 2024, and this is, I tell the story all the time. One of the former GMs I talked to said, no hyperbole, it was one of the best offensive lines of all time. Of all time. Of all time. Lane Johnson, from left to right, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Mekhi Becton, Lane Johnson. From left to right. One of the best offensive lines of all time. Well, Lane wasn't there for 9 games. Mekhi was gone. Playing poorly, by the way, with the Chargers. Didn't fit. Fit here, didn't fit there. Landon was a Pro Bowl guard, one of the best guards in the league. Was basically crippled last year. And I don't use that term. He was just destroyed, his body. By the way, all the tush push people should pay attention to what Cam Jurgens said about the tush push and what it did to their bodies. Cam Jurgens, coming off the back surgery, just told on Bussing with the Boys how bad it was. Still working his way back, wasn't himself last year. And Jordan Mailata, as I said, was graded as the best player in football. Think about that. The best player in football, regardless of position, by Pro Football Focus, whether you like them or not. Number 1, regardless of position. Last year, he was just really good. How do you replicate that? The organization understands that's why they're probably going to draft an offensive tackle later this month. Lane Johnson is on the precipice of retirement. Maybe this being his last year. Is he going to be? I think he's going to play well if he stays healthy, but is he going to be peak Lane Johnson? Probably not. Is Landon Dickerson ever going to get back to what he was? Probably not. Is Cam Jurgens ever going to get back to where he was? Maybe. He says he feels better. I think, a year off back surgery, there's potential there. Tyler Steen was good as a rookie, but he wasn't Mekhi Becton good in the run game, especially. How many of those Saquon long runs was Mekhi Becton leading the way with a pancake block? He doesn't have that kind of physicality. And Jordan Mailata wasn't as good. So you can't replicate one of the best offensive lines in history from year to year. But I do think it remains the strength of the team if they can get the guys right. However, the odds they get the guys right from a physical perspective are probably not long. So I think from Nick's perspective, it's like, well, we aren't going to be able to lean on one of the best offensive lines of all time. So we got to scheme it up a little bit better. Again, whether he's right or wrong, you can have that argument, but that's the belief, and he's the head coach. And to be fair, they were better when he took it over, the running game, and when he took it over than previously, because teams were just taking advantage of the situation and swarming Saquon out of the gun and out of the pistol.
Mailata didn't look great until he had a healthy Dickerson next to him. Without a healthy Dickerson, he was slightly above mediocre. I don't know about that, but
he wasn't mediocre, but he wasn't what he was the year prior.
That tush push was not worth the 1 yard. Stupid. Kimberly, thanks for the chat very much. When I listen to that, and I'm definitely not a football expert, but when I listen to the experts, meaning you, when I listen to Zander, and I hear all of that, and I factor in AJ's departure, which I'm assuming is inevitable, and I factor in another year of an aging offensive line and a tight end who couldn't block as well last year as he's done in the past.
And then I should have mentioned that as well. He had a big decline.
Big decline.
Blocker.
Jalen potentially now on the doorstep of his last year in Philadelphia. Is that possible? If all of that is part of what the equation is, because Nick Sirianni, the acting CEO, is changing or implementing an offense that doesn't play to the strength of who the players are, this team's going into a rebuild.
Well, I don't think they're going into a rebuild because they still have significant talent on the defensive side. As I mentioned, they still have a bunch of good players on the offensive side, just not what they once were. But I do think during this, since 2022, there was pretty high ceiling for this team. Super Bowl contender. I think the ceiling's still there if everything goes correctly, but the floor is much lower. Like, things could go really badly. I mean, really badly. And that, I'm not talking 4 wins, but if they won 8 and 9, which would be a catastrophe in this city, it wouldn't shock me. I mean, that the floor is much lower. Like, the previous 4 years, I didn't even consider them being under 500. There's so many moving parts that could go wrong. They could have a poor season.
John, I don't even remember in any sort of great number where you would even find yourself picking against the Birds going into the game. The Eagles were a feared.
Oh, yeah. At one point, they won like 20 of 21 or whatever it was. I mean.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden, with the only thing that's changed, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong here. The only thing that has changed is the desire to implement a system that doesn't support the talent that you have. And
no, no, I'm going to push back on that because there's a lot of descending players on offense. And you can ask Zander. I've been saying this throughout the season, when it became clear to me. And people hate me for it, but there's a lot of descending players on this offense. Guys are going the wrong direction. Like one of the things is, I think a lot of NFL fans, it's not just Philadelphia, it's in general. This league moves quickly. And just because you were a star yesterday doesn't mean you're a star today. It will pass you by. It will humble you. They have a bunch of guys people perceive as stars on offense that didn't play like stars on offense last year. So they are descending on offense, and they know it. And that's why Howie's said we have to draft offense. We have to get younger. We have to start rolling it over. However, it's difficult to do because they're also highly paid. But over the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to see a whole different offense. I mean, you're going to see a whole different offense. Saquon's probably not going to be here. AJ's probably not going to be here. Dallas isn't going to be here. Lane's not going to be here. You're going to see a whole different offense over the next 2 to 3 years. Maybe Jalen. A whole different offense.
That's what I mean. The window of this winning era is over.
It's not over. I mean, they're running it back.
Your Eagles are no longer in a position to be able to stake their flag and go into a season thinking that they're going to dominate every team that comes out.
That's the nature of the sport. It's cyclical. And, Jeffrey Lurie spoke about that. It's like everything this league is built for parity. They want everybody to be 8-8. Well, they play 17 games now. They want everybody to be in the mix. That's what generates interest. My team has a chance to win on Sunday. Now, ultimately, obviously, there are good teams who pop their head up, but it doesn't last forever. It's a cyclical industry because the talent is cyclical. And if you're good, well, where do you draft? You draft 32nd when you win the Super Bowl. You're not drafting first. The whole thing is built to tear you down. So that's why it's so difficult to stay consistently good. And that's why this era of Eagles football, when people look back on it, will go, wow, that was really good. In the midst of it, I think people get spoiled, expectations. It's not easy to win in this league as much as the Eagles have won. And you're seeing part of it. It's like, how long do you want to go? How long do you want to go with players? It's such difficult. And then you make some mistakes and you extend people and all of a sudden they decline and they're not performing at the level that their contracts will justify. It's really difficult. And everybody goes through it. And the good teams, the dynasty teams, I think in a lot of ways, I always say Tom Brady broke a lot of people's minds because people expect, well, do what the Patriots did. Nobody's doing what the Patriots did ever again. And the Eagles have been better than most about sustaining success. And that's why, Nick, it's not about Super Bowls. It's about sustained success because so many things have to align to win a Super Bowl, starting with health and going on down. And if you're in a position, and really Andy Reid had the same philosophy, just get yourself to the dance and hopefully the stars will align at some point. And you go win a Super Bowl, but you're not going to do it every year.
Well, but Andy was always able, even in his tenure in Philadelphia, after his first season, I guess, he was always able to manage all of it in some way, shape, or form, and ultimately win. And he's done it long. And in Kansas City, he was able to be still.
Well, Kansas City's a little bit different because he's got Patrick Mahomes, who's kind of a little bit of a cheat code, so it's going to keep you ahead of it. But he had bad seasons in Philly. He had a good 6-year run.
Good 6-year run with Donovan.
Obviously five consecutive playoff berths. And then he went 6-10, and then it became more difficult. 10-6, 8-8, 9-6-1, and they make a run to the championship game, but they weren't a great team. 11-5, good season. 10-6, good season. 8-8, 4-12, he's out. Everybody's got a shelf life.
Yeah.
But he had bad seasons here, which I think, but again, the resume is tremendous overall because of how difficult it is to win. And then in Kansas City, it's been even better, but the difference is he's got Patrick Mahomes, and even last year it fell off. So, they won 6 games last year. Andy Reid's still Andy Reid. But you kind of saw it in the Super Bowl. That's when I got right. I was like, oof.
Yeah, the difference is if the Eagles win 6 games this year,
Nick's out. Yeah, if they win 6 games, yeah.
Nick Sirianni's not the head coach.
No,
going into next
but
season.
I mean, that's the nature of it. And you could do it with Bill Belichick. Everybody, if you're coaching as long as Andy Reid, you're going to have bad seasons because it's a talent-driven business at the end of the day, no matter how good a coach you are. He didn't become a bad coach last year. They won 6 games because their talent got old. And Patrick got hurt at the end, but they got old. You saw it in the Super Bowl. They got destroyed by the Eagles. It's almost amazing they got to that Super Bowl with what they showed up with.
Well, that's why I find it so hard to kind of understand where the team is today from not that long ago. And I get it. I get the aging and the injury and everything else, but I think it's self-inflicted. I mean, I think it coach to my strength. I want to coach to my strength, John. I want
that's
players to have their best success, and implementing a system that doesn't fit the roster. I think
that's a conversation to have this year. They didn't do it. They came in the last year trying to run it back and do the exact same thing, and it didn't work. That's the point. They were trying to run back the exact same thing last year.
Well, they changed the offense last year, didn't they?
No. Not until midway through the season when they started the Minnesota game, I guess, is when they started it. So whenever that was, week 8.
What's the average number of offensive plays that you'll get in the course of a football game? Is it 50 or 60 plays or something like that? What is it?
60-ish, if you're having
so did they run from last year's numbers? Do you recall? Did they run the football 50% of the time, or is it a 50-50 split?
Well,
I'm just curious.
Yeah, those are run pass ratio is, I always say it's the worst stat in the history of football. Tell me who's winning in the fourth quarter, and I'll tell you what the run pass ratio is.
Yeah, I've heard you.
That's all that.
Yeah, and that's all. The only thing that you made a point in this show of saying that last year one of their deficiencies was they found themselves not having success in second down, first or second down, and they were behind. They were forced.
Yeah, they're behind the sticks, and then
behind the sticks. So they were forced to. They were forced for bigger conversions on third down or passing situations, which was a direct result of their ability to not do well on first and second down.
yeah, which was they didn't run the ball. The year prior, they had an historic running game, and last year they were below average for the first half of the season. You go from historic to below average, mainly because of injuries to the offensive line.
Right.
I mean, and that's not something, but they tried. They were running the same offense last year until they shifted when they felt they had to because they didn't have the same offensive line.
All right. Good stuff from Johnny Mack today. Thanks, everyone. We still got a couple of minutes left in the show, but I want to make sure that I thank everybody for being part of Birds 365. After today, I will not be back in this chair, but I am in the chair today for Zander, Krause. John, last couple of minutes, I want to get your hard thoughts on Jalen, and here's why. You have been on this show. You have covered him from the day that he was drafted. I can go back and watch reports on Football 24/7 and on his progression, on your criticism, on your acknowledgement of him as a player, on the transition of what he made from when he came into the league to being a Super Bowl MVP. And now we find ourselves with a report on Jalen and perhaps he will move on. What is your true assessment, John, of Jalen Hurts as a quarterback in this league? Forget about all the other noise. Jalen Hurts, the Super Bowl MVP. What is your assessment of him as a player?
Well, I think things like that cloud it. He was never a top 5 quarterback in this league, even when he was the Super Bowl MVP. He had moments where he looked like a top 5 quarterback, but that's about consistency from week to week. But what he is he's a very good NFL quarterback who's very unique and has the ability to win, to take a team and win at a high level. He's already proven that without a doubt. Now, one of the things is, the assumption that there's the belief that quarterbacks you win because of and quarterbacks you win with, and he would be in the latter category. However, I don't think the first category exists. I never thought it existed. There is no quarterback in the history of this game that has won at the highest level with a bad supporting cast. Not one. Not Tom Brady, not Peyton Manning. If you want to go back to Otto Graham and Johnny Unitas, they never took a bad team and won a championship. It really is the ultimate team game for a reason. So, is he ever going to be a top 5 passing quarterback? No, never. Forget about that. Does he need to embrace things that he's uncomfortable with? Yes. And do the Eagles need to embrace the uniqueness of his game? Yes. I really don't think it's that difficult, but everybody's making it difficult because I think I've said this for a while with Zander, he can tell you. I think quarterback evaluation in pro football in general is broken, and I certainly think it's the discussion, the narrative is broken in Philadelphia. I think this whole thing is about even forget about the fans and even the media, because I get them not I can't believe the Eagles are doing what they're doing. Like, that's what bothers me. The biggest compliment I give to the Eagles all the time is 9 times out of 10, everything they do makes sense. You might not agree with it, but it makes sense. This makes no sense. Trying to go towards this offense. So my belief is eventually it's just lip service, and they're trying to get him out of his comfort level and get him to learn different things so they can be better at those things when they need to use them. That's my hope for the team. Is that realistic? I don't know. We're going to see. Last time they did it, they were honest and they said, yeah, we're not good at this. We're going to do this. Are they going to be honest this time, or are they going to pound the square peg in the round hole? No idea.
Kimberly references, watch the Eisenfowler article. It tells you, lastly, John, she's right, I guess. That article is what's created all the, created the latest drama. Last thing, is Jalen wrong? Do you think Jalen Hurts is wrong in his approach or his desire to not want to accept this new offense?
Yeah, I think he's taken it too far. I don't think it's not unique, or it's not. It's not. You do what your quarterback is comfortable with. I mean, that's common sense. That's common. A commonality between every offense. You don't generally want to put a quarterback in an uncomfortable situation a lot. Now, as Jonathan Gannon once told me on defense, sometimes you got to ask somebody to do what they're not comfortable with. And he called it tough duty. Some plays, some schemes, some things, you're going to be put in a position which is uncomfortable. Now, the goal is to limit that as much as humanly possible, but it's going to happen because it's a game that humbles you. He needs to embrace the fact that he needs to get better under center, and he needs to get better drop back passing. He needs to get the ball out quicker. He needs to operate, in the natural flow of the offense a little bit better, and not rely as much on unscripted stuff. All that is true. And he needs to be more open-minded about it. But what's also true is he shouldn't be in a Kyle Shanahan drop back play action scheme. And I think there's a lot of Eagles fans. One of the biggest jokes I always hear, because people hate the media, they blame the messenger. They're blaming poor Jeremy Fowler and Tim McManus. Everything they reported was true. We've talked about it for years on this show. They blame the messenger. And, I always hear sources have agendas. I said this yesterday on the show. They do. Every source has an agenda. Every human being has an agenda. Everybody you come across today has an agenda. Every fan who defends Jalen Hurts has an agenda. They want to defend Jalen Hurts. That's why you talk to multiple people to get the best feeling of what's going on in the organization. And he is headstrong, and he doesn't like doing things, and he's got to open his mind a little bit. But that's a two-way street. And ultimately, your hope as an Eagles fan, and most of the people listening to the show are Eagles fans, your hope should be he opens up his mind, and the coaching staff does what they did in 2024. Let's try to evolve it during the offseason. Let's use the 9 weeks and the OTAs and the minicamp. Let's try to evolve it. That'll continue at the beginning of training camp. But when the games start, you do what you do best to win a football game.
Great way to end the show today on Birds 365. Thanks very much to JAKIB Nation for being out there today. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share today's broadcast. Appreciate all of the comments and all of the activity in the chat. Again, it's a little bit challenging for me to be able to read in real time because I got to pop the glasses off and all of that stuff, but I'll have to correct that. Great stuff today, Johnny Mac. Appreciate it, my friend, on this Good Friday. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm glad I got a chance to ride shotgun with you for a couple hours today on Birds 365. For all of our watchers out there on the JAKIB Sports Network, don't forget the Big Dan Cilio today from 2 to 6 p.m. I'm sure he'll have some good conversation to take you into the weekend. Johnny Mac, we'll see you back here on the network on Monday morning, brother.
All right, sounds good. Thanks all.
See you next time, everyone.